Hey associates, this mini lecture discusses digital accessibility with applications and a roundup of tools we have available to improve our content in any workplace. First, I'm going to explain some key terms for inclusive and universal design. Last, and this will be fun, I'm going to run some tests and actually do an audit of my own Canvas shell with those principles. We'll talk about what I find. I'm low-key a little nervous, but also pretty excited. So let's get started. What we call inclusive design and universal design for learning have principles that apply to all workplaces and technical communication situations, not just education or professional development. Remember that a key goal of making useful, usable, enjoyable content in technical communication rests with action-oriented purposes. People use technical writing to learn, complete tasks, and take action. A little groundwork. Accessibility for technical and information designers is focused on any difficulty experienced in interacting with systems of information. We work with the definition from our Society of Technical Communication in their body of knowledge. It says, accessibility is the ease with which people can access, use, and understand a product. With an extended part of that being accessible content means it is easy for a person with a disability to approach, enter, operate, participate in, or use safely, independently, and with dignity. Since we are in the information and communication space, the testing and the guidelines mainly center on low vision, hearing impairments, and cognitive or learning disabilities. For those of you going into products like apps, web development, and tangible goods, you will also want to consider haptic disabilities with, how people physically move and interact with your products. The U.S. General Services Administration outlines inclusive and universal design frameworks that tie into the Information and Communication Technology ICT 508 standards. Now, these standards are mandated for federal agencies and related government sector content, but they offer strong guidelines for all private sectors too. When we think about inclusive design for the field, we follow a belief and a process to create products and environments that are accessible to all people, regardless of age, disability, or other factors. Basically, it's creating things without the need for people to go through special adaptation, because the original was intended for diverse users and their abilities to get what they need already. The content should be equally effective with an equivalent ease of use for all those users. Imagine you're designing a mobile app for healthcare. Inclusive design means consideration of users with visual impairments who might need larger text or better color contrast. It means considering users with limited dexterity who might struggle with the tiny little buttons or complex gestures. It means making sure the app works well on different devices and internet speed so people in rural areas with slower connections aren't left out as well. The most straightforward elements of accessible and inclusive content that everyone, no matter what your job and role in the technical communication spectrum or content creation focuses on, are alt text that describes images for screen reading software, a lack of structure with missing tag headings and clear topic groupings, insufficient color contrast between text and backgrounds, and overall content quality. So are you writing with active voice that is easier to comprehend, appropriate language to the audience's background? Remember your campsite for strong language, and a clear purpose statement. Give us the topic, details, next, patterns that guide the reader to the information's goals. Revisit lectures and chapters on the structure and editing or all of that quality content writing. Now, the cool thing about inclusive design is that it often leads to better products for everyone. For example, captions on videos benefit people with hearing impairments and also people watching a video in a noisy environment, learning a new language, or taking notes for school. I use captions on a lot of videos, even though I can and usually am hearing and listening to the audio at the same time. And features like voice control, originally designed for people with mobility and haptic disabilities, are now used by millions of people every day, simply because voice is often easier than typing. Inclusive design is about giving users the control over their experience. So in the content space, we also use Universal Design for Learning, or UDL. Think of it like this. Not everyone learns or prefers to interact with content in the same way. Some people prefer visual content, some prefer hands-on activities, and others are going to thrive and do well with lectures and audio. UDL is about providing flexibility in how the information is presented. So let's say you're creating information about a health procedure with the target audience of the potential patient. Instead of giving them only a printed pamphlet of information, UDL suggests offering options. There could be a video explaining the same content as the pamphlet, an interactive simulation, allowing them to see all the steps of the procedure, and a support group discussion forum already set up so they can go talk about it with others. This way, everyone can grasp the concepts in a way that works for them. Of course, all those options takes resources, time, and creativity. Realistically, we often are not able to make simulations and interactive content in our role. So a smaller scale use of UDL here would be providing the pamphlet, video, and audio versions that all explain the same equivalent information. The pamphlet could be a highly designed version of the transcript from the video and the audio to ensure the users all get that same content regardless of the medium they prefer to learn through. That strategy is efficient in the workflow and wouldn't use too many more resources while giving your audience their control and preferences. So let's put my work to the test. I'm going to hop into one of the college courses that I teach and explore how well I did with accessibility, inclusive design, and universal design principles. It's going to be an audit of how well I'm walking the walk in my content production. All right, so I am here in my Canvas course, logged in as student view, so we can just do some auditing and assessment. So, right, it says things should be perceivable, so things like text alternatives. Right away, do you have an image here? Click on it, and I did add that alt text describing what it is, avatar, right, of me. And I also remember to write kind of the text label, so that way it could be read. That should be something that is perceivable, even if you can't see kind of what that image is. Okay, alternatives, adaptables, things like, okay, structure, purpose of inputs, and distinguishable. So, the black on kind of white and how this like toggles to be quite different, I think does speak to some good perceivable things. So if you're, hovering over it. Thinking about understandable, predictable, I think there's a lot of consistency. You see, okay, reading is like heading 1, big gold box, which is consistent with the next heading. So as you're kind of skipping and scanning, consistent there. So I definitely feel like this page does have a pretty good, like predictable, understandable pattern with what I, kind of tried to create. So again, I have a label that is kind of the caption there. Now, since this image is actually a link, it definitely like changes and doesn't necessarily have kind of alt text on there. Although, look at that, I did in fact remember to write my alt text. So when I inspect the element, right, I do have all equals cartoon professor waving from inside of a laptop. So screen reader would be able to kind of read that and then also identify that it is a link. Now, some of the things from Universal Design, also in terms of alternatives and time-based stuff, having things like captions. And so there are captions showing up here. I mean, so far it's like looking pretty good, and they are pretty solid captions, but I definitely haven't like really bothered to triple check that they're good there. So when I'm like looking at some of the advanced approaches to accessibility in universal design, some of the things in terms of the invisible disabilities, they recommend, giving people enough time to complete actions, not rushing. So nothing on here is that time-based outside of the major deadlines. And even then, there is, like automatic 48-hour extensions if you need a little bit more time. I mean, I have gone in and added things like word count and reading time estimates, which are, based off just the super kind of average neurotypical reading speed. I think that I should actually expand this to be more of a like overall reading and note taking time or like engagement time, which will be way longer if you're stopping to really comprehend, take your notes. And so I think that is something that I need to update and not do it purely based on the word calculation, but more of like overall, because it might be giving people, especially users with anxiety and users with dyslexia, kind of a unrealistic expectation of how fast you can move through these materials. So good idea, but I definitely need to go and audit and fix that aspect, I think. So they would watch a video, and I do have, right, the transcript file, but it's not formatted. Again, I definitely am cutting corners and being really lazy that I need to go back and absolutely fix. Like, yes, the transcript's available if you need it, but like, obviously this view is terrible, and I just pulled this from the automatic transcripts. Otherwise, you watch on YouTube, and again, the captions are just going to show up, but they are the auto-generated ones and not kind of my uploaded or checked ones. Then there is the reading chapter. And I've gone through and tried to do like a lot of design, kind of principles, making things stand out, right? Using images if I can. Don't use large blocks of heavy text. I mean, that's just a principle of technical writing. So you kind of like break it up with little symbols to draw attention that relate to the note-taking guide. I mean, it is a textbook, so obviously there's going to be a lot of text. This isn't a rule of like, don't give people the information they need. It's just try to, kind of block it. Materials and other formats, for example, audio or video. So yes, I do have the podcast lecture version of it, which is the actual recording of the chapter. And so what I actually was doing, this is the formatted version of the transcript. So kind of, I should fix this transcript with what I was doing here. So I wrote out the whole script, recorded it as a podcast, and then took the script that I recorded and rewrote, reformatted it to be a nice readable kind of textbook chapter with images, tables when, appropriate, trying to kind of translate things over. So yeah, I definitely think I did a good job on that element in terms of kind of those things. Oh, all right. So here's something that is not scaling really well that I should have kept a better eye on. So when I like designed it, right, as long as your kind of page width, if you're on an actual, screen, so if I kind of full screen, so it's that full 1080, right, then it, this is how it was designed and intended to look, and that works really well. But I'm not being very kind of like inclusive or accessible because I didn't fully kind of think about, if you have it sized at kind of some particular stuff. Canvas is great that it does auto kind of resize at certain kind of key points, which is good. But definitely if you're like playing around with your scaling yourself, you can kind of see where the dynamic adjustments sort of are confused and breaking. So that's something you got to keep in mind. I like, having these sort of contained boxes that go into some of these better principles of like having like small kind of, sections and trying to be like very like clear, direct. This is when it's due, literally like this is what you need to do. Trying to help you not be overwhelmed, but I need to keep that design in perspective. The project brief, so and also providing it in different formats. So if all of this interaction is too like overwhelming, there is this plain text file, which can also be like printed. And so it just, opens up the just the plain text basically that you can read through, and it is a little bit less, I think, overwhelming with all the key, requirements. So you're not missing any information if you read it that way. It's just a different situation. And then having these interactions again from like so these ones are working with the keyboard. I can press enter and use the arrow, so that's good. But it's only contained here. So it's like I have to click on my mouse to get here first. And then same here, I do offer a sample, a build video, so you can watch me build it. And things like the transcripts end up being, kind of provided directly. So just my biggest thing is I I've relied knowing that the transcript is just available for you. So I have been extremely kind of lazy, honestly, and slow in going back and like rewriting my own transcripts to make sure it's all perfect. So that's a big part of the audit, I think. Cool. Okay, so then one last thing that I do want to kind of check in terms of the very different kind of aspects. So if I go into my rendering tab, I do like to double check what things will look like for those of you who use dark mode. So I definitely that's important. And then I do go through and I do kind of check what it looks like in some of these different screen sizes. So if you're on your iPhone, right, your Pixel, and it all looks like pretty good there. So again, that dynamic resizing is more of an issue for your like super custom sizes. But yeah, I'd like to check dark mode, make sure that you can see all the buttons still, read all the text. And I just do that by really not messing around with the default colors. That way it translates over, right? Everything does still look pretty readable in dark mode. So I feel confident that if you are using that, you should be able to kind of see everything. Let's go back to like the home page and see what that dark mode looks like. Okay, good. Yeah, the buttons still have that good border, so it stands out in that way. The links definitely have good contrast to stand out. The white on the gold is definitely a harder contrast. I think that would be flagged. And so I definitely want to maybe reconsider what color combos are used there for the dark mode users, which I know a lot of students tend to kind of view things in that dark mode format. What does my reading page look like in dark mode? We'll check that. Yeah, good. Same thing, like the gold on the black definitely works a lot better. So I think maybe changing my headings to all be this style for the homepage so we get rid of that white on gold kind of contrast issue, because this one is definitely a lot better version of that. So we also have some of these tools called UDOT. So content 97. I mean, that's an A plus, right? Or A plus, depending on what grading scale that we're using. So I feel extremely good about my content, even though I do have 100 errors. I still have like a 97% passing, so definitely want to think about that. Most common errors, okay, yes, right. All the closed captions are auto-generated, which we talked about, I already knew. And so I definitely need to go back and fix that just to ensure that they're good. Level headings should not be skipped, and some captions. So most of it goes into the captions, which I was aware of. Let's see what it says here. Should not be skipped. What if we review that? Don't know why it's being skipped. Because it definitely is tagged as, I mean, it has card subtitle. Maybe it's because I didn't actually tag it as like a heading, and instead this class isn't getting picked up. So I'll definitely have to go through and I guess fix that for all of them. So that's a good thing to look at. What's missing? A title, missing title, untagged file. So these are all the files that I uploaded. And when we talk about a missing title, yeah, I guess I just don't have like a title on the file itself. But the naming convention of the file is like really, descriptive. And so I kind of followed writing principles there, just naming conventions for my files, indicating what it is. But I didn't actually put a title tag like on the cover of the PDF. So that's definitely something that I'll think about and go back and do, and maybe add just a little cover page where I can tag it as a title, so that way there's no issues or confusion with screen readers there. And I don't really know what it means by like an untagged file. I'll have to like go in and research that. I don't know what it is actually asking me to do. All right, and then it looks like I'm missing some alt text image, but these are not image files. what it's mad at. I think it might actually be looking through the document itself and telling me that I missed an image alt text, like in the file, possibly. All right, and within Word, one of the like handy things that we can actually do, right, this is just a template, again, with part of good universal design. It's like giving you tools and support that you need. But inside of Word, we can actually go into this review tab and go on check accessibility, and it will kind of tell me. So yes, I do have some alt text missing. So color contrast is good. Missing alt text, yes, I do. This was just a placeholder, so I might just even put because there really isn't anything there. And I could almost mark it as decorative, except I do want to indicate if somebody was using a screen reader that, you know, there would be kind of content here. Otherwise, everything else I did correctly. Yay! After checking, I am pleased with my audit. I have some key notes to work on in the future to ensure my content stays accessible and I'm accommodating by default better. Namely, I definitely have to work on my transcripts and those captions. I do provide them, but rely way too heavily on automated generations instead of validating and ensuring they work perfectly. The easiest fix for me will be exporting the transcript from Resolve or Premiere, which are the two editors that I usually use, and uploading the actual caption track and file to YouTube. Otherwise, I designed it with dark mode, different screen sizes, and usability in mind. I try to provide different content experiences and diverse mediums for that universal design perspective. I gotta keep doing it, but I'll definitely take that A+ grade. Thanks for joining me, associates. While it is a legal and ethical responsibility and requirement for those in public communication roles to provide digitally accessible content, we don't always get it 100% correct. We should follow the best practices and legal expectations where we can and continue making improvements. We have to audit ourselves and make a plan to get better. Moving forward, design everything with diverse users in mind and try your best to provide the experience they need immediately. Just think about others. Design useful, usable, and enjoyable content. Thanks, associates. Vibes.